When aliens harvested, humanity's ancient guardians awaken. Commander ZYX-9 gazed through the viewing portal of the harvester's ship, watching the blue planet grow larger as they approached. His 3 secondary eyes blinked in sequence while his main ocular receptor remained fixed on the target. Earth. Such a ridiculous name for such a resource-rich world. Commander, said Lieutenant Krell, his voice sac pulsating with each syllable. Final preparations for the harvest are complete. Stealth shields operating at 98% efficiency. Only 98%? How reassuring. ZYX-9's mandibles clicked in what passed for a sarcastic smile among the Vexari. I'm sure the humans won't notice the 2-mile-long spaceship hovering above their major population centers. They're probably too busy taking pictures of their food or arguing about which primitive should lead their tribal regions. Krell's antenna drooped slightly. The atmospheric interference is, spare me your excuses, Lieutenant. Just make sure the collection pods are ready. The harvest begins in 6 Earth hours. ZYX-9 turned his attention back to the approaching planet. The Vexari Empire had been monitoring Earth for centuries, watching humanity evolve from primitive tool users to slightly less primitive digital tool users. Their species had such potential but wasted it on war, entertainment, and creating increasingly elaborate ways to avoid face-to-face communication. But they did produce exceptional offspring. Human children contained a neural enzyme called Zeta-9, named, coincidentally, after ZYX-9 himself when he discovered it 50 Earth years ago. This enzyme, when properly extracted and processed, created the most powerful fuel source in the known universe. One human child could power a Vexari city for a month. And Earth had billions of them. Sir! Science Officer Melix approached, her exoskeleton chittering with excitement. I've been analyzing the latest planetary scans and found something unusual. Define unusual, officer. ZYX-9 didn't bother hiding his annoyance. Melix had a tendency to find the extraordinary in the ordinary. The humans have been digging, sir. Deep underground excavations all over the planet, but particularly concentrated in regions they call Egypt, Peru, and Antarctica. Humans dig. They're always digging. For resources, for artifacts, for the sheer pleasure of destroying their own planet. What's your point? Melix's lower limbs twisted nervously. These excavations align perfectly with the ancient warning markers we discovered on Mars. The ones that spoke of the sleeping ones. The command deck fell silent. Even ZYX-9 felt his exoskeleton tighten involuntarily. The sleeping ones are a myth, Officer Melix. A scary story told to Vexari hatchlings to make them behave. With respect, Commander, the Mars inscriptions predate Vexari civilization by several million years. And they specifically warned against harvesting from Earth because it might awaken ancient horrors. Yes, I'm familiar with the legend. ZYX-9 waved a dismissive limb. Next you'll tell me the humans' ridiculous mythology about gods and monsters has some basis in fact. Lieutenant Krell cleared his throat sacs. Commander, perhaps we should investigate these excavations before proceeding with the harvest? ZYX-9 turned all 4 eyes on Krell, who immediately shrank back. The High Council has mandated this harvest. Our home world faces an energy crisis that threatens our entire civilization. And you want to delay because of some dusty warnings and human digging projects? He addressed the entire command deck now. The harvest proceeds as planned. Prepare the collection pods. As his crew scurried to obey, ZYX-9 returned to the viewing portal. Humans were so predictable, so easy to manipulate. Their children would disappear in small groups, no more than 20,000 per continent during this initial phase, and the adults would blame each other. Governments would fall, conspiracy theories would multiply, and by the time they realized what was happening, the Vexari would have harvested enough to sustain their empire for decades. What could possibly go wrong? 12 hours later, ZYX-9 was asking himself that very question as alarms blared throughout the harvester's ship. Report! He demanded, bursting onto the command deck where chaos reigned. Officers ran between stations, communication panels flashed urgent warnings, and the ship's artificial gravity fluctuated, causing everyone to bounce slightly with each step. Collection pods 17 through 42 have gone dark, Commander! Krell shouted over the alarms. We've lost contact with all teams in the region humans call Egypt. How is that possible? The pods are equipped with our most advanced technology. Unknown, sir, but it gets worse. Krell's voice sacs had paled to a sickly yellow. Before contact was lost, we received this transmission. He activated the main viewing screen, which flickered to life showing the interior of Collection Pod 23. 3 Vexari soldiers were visible, their exoskeletons cracked and leaking fluid. Behind them stood something. The image was blurry, but ZYX9 could make out a tall, jackal-headed figure with glowing eyes. By the High Council, Melix whispered. That looks like their god Anubis. Don't be ridiculous. ZYX9 snapped, though his mandibles trembled. It's obviously a human in a costume. The transmission continued. One of the dying Vexari soldiers looked directly at the camera, green blood bubbling from his speech orifice. They were waiting for us. The humans, they knew we were coming. They've unleashed the old ones. The jackal-headed figure stepped forward, and the temperature on the command deck seemed to drop 10 degrees despite being a recording. When it spoke, its voice was like stone grinding against stone. You have taken our children. We have awakened the ancient guardians. Your species is known to us now, Vexari. The harvest of souls begins. The transmission cut out. Silence fell over the command deck, broken only by the continuing alarms. It's a trick, ZYX9 said finally, though without conviction. An elaborate human deception. Commander, said the communications officer. We're receiving similar reports from Peru. Collection pods 43 through 65 have encountered hostile entities matching the description of the human deity Quetzalcoatl. And in Antarctica, added another officer. Collection pods 66 through 89 report contact with massive entities rising from beneath the ice. The humans are calling them the Elder Things. ZYX9's exoskeleton felt too tight suddenly. This couldn't be happening. The sleeping ones were a myth, a legend, Sir! Krell pointed at the viewing portal. Look! Outside, the darkness of space was changing. Stars were moving. No, not moving, vanishing, as something massive blocked them out. Something approaching the ship. Magnify! ZYX9 ordered, his voice barely audible. The viewing portal zoomed in, and collective gasps filled the command deck. A vast shape was emerging from Earth's shadow. It had the general appearance of a cephalopod, but impossibly huge, with tentacles that stretched for miles and a central mass larger than the harvester's ship itself. Where its face should be, countless eyes blinked in asynchronous patterns. That's not possible, ZYX9 whispered. Nothing can survive in the vacuum of space without, Commander. Neelix interrupted, her scientific curiosity somehow overriding her terror. I don't think it's surviving in space. I think it's existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Our sensors are only capturing the three-dimensional portion of its true form. As if hearing her, the entity turned its attention directly to the ship. All its eyes blinked once, in perfect unison. Every electronic system on the harvester's ship failed simultaneously. In the darkness that followed, ZYX9 thought about the Mars inscriptions. About the warnings. About the arrogance of the Vexari in ignoring them. Emergency power, now! He shouted. Dim red lighting flickered on, revealing his terrified crew. Sir? Krell said, checking a backup terminal. All collection pods still in operation are reporting the same phenomenon. Entities from human mythology are appearing globally, attacking our forces. That's impossible. Human myths are just stories. They can't. The Norse god Thor has destroyed our northern European units with lightning that shorted out our most advanced shielding. Krell continued, ignoring his commander's protests. Cali has decimated our Asian contingent. Something calling itself Anansi has outsmarted our tactical AI in Africa. And in North America. He paused, mandibles clicking in disbelief. In North America, our pods report attacks by entities matching descriptions of Native American thunderbirds, alongside what appears to be a giant man in flannel carrying an axe. Paul Bunyan? Melix asked incredulously. Even their folk heroes are manifesting? This is insanity. ZYX9 hissed. Recall all remaining pods. We're aborting the mission. Sir, many pods report they're being prevented from returning. Something is hunting them. A new transmission appeared on the emergency screen. It showed the interior of Collection Pod 12, located in what humans called Greece. The pod was intact, but empty of Vexari personnel. Instead, a single human female stood in the center, wearing a simple white dress, her eyes completely black. "Hello, Commander ZYX9, she said, though her lips didn't move. I am but one voice for many. We have been sleeping for millennia, bound by pacts and belief. But you broke the covenant when you took the children. Who are you? ZYX9 demanded. What are you? Names have power, Commander. Your species should have learned that from the Mars warnings. But since you ask so directly. The woman smiled, and her teeth were too numerous, too sharp. I have been called Hecate, goddess of witchcraft. Others you have encountered have their own names, their own domains. We were worshipped once, then feared, then forgotten, but never truly gone. What do you want from us? Want? The woman thing laughed, a sound like breaking glass. We want nothing from you. We simply are. The question is what humanity wants. And they want their children back. The children are unharmed. ZYX9 lied. We can return them. Commander, Krell whispered urgently. Processing has already begun on the first batch. Their neural enzymes have been extracted. They cannot be returned. The woman's head tilted at an impossible angle. We know. That is why there will be a price. Outside the ship, the massive tentacled entity drew closer. On the emergency screen, the woman's eyes leaked black fluid that defied the pod's artificial gravity, flowing upward. Humanity has inadvertently protected your kind for millennia, Commander. Their belief in science, their dismissal of the supernatural, has kept us bound, weakened, relegated to dreams and stories. But now they know better. Now they see. And they have made new pacts with old powers. ZYX9 felt something he had never experienced before, true fear. Not the biological response to danger programmed into all Vexari, but a deep, primal terror that seemed to come from outside himself. What do you mean, a price? He asked. The children you have taken cannot be restored. So a balance must be maintained. The woman's smile widened until it split her face halfway up her head. A child for a child, Commander. Your species has approximately 6 billion offspring currently alive across your empire. Humanity has lost 20,000 of theirs, so far. Understanding dawned, cold and horrifying. You can't reach our home world. It's light years away. Distance is an illusion, Commander. Space and time are but suggestions to beings like us. The Vexari taught humanity a lesson today about the universe. The black-eyed woman began to fade from view. There are predators in the dark. And you are not the apex. As she vanished, the tentacled entity outside pressed against the hull of the harvester's ship. Metal groaned. Warning lights flashed. And on every screen across the vessel, a simple message appeared. Dr. Janet Chen watched the satellite feed with a mixture of awe and horror as the massive alien vessel was enveloped by what appeared to be a living darkness. Around her, the underground facility beneath the Smithsonian buzzed with activity as the world's top scientists, military personnel, and, more unusually, folklorists, mythologists, and occultists worked in unexpected harmony. It's actually working, said Professor Muhammad El Hashim, leading Egyptologist and the man who had discovered the chamber beneath the Sphinx 3 years ago. The binding rituals are containing the old ones while they do whatever they're doing to the aliens. For now, cautioned Grandmother Willow, a Native American elder who had been instrumental in the awakening ceremony at Chaco Canyon. But we've made bargains with entities that do not think as we do. They will keep their word. They will protect our children and punish those who took them. But there will be consequences. Janet nodded grimly. When the alien abductions began 3 months ago, governments around the world had initially blamed each other. But when Janet's own daughter Lily vanished from her bedroom, leaving behind strange residue that matched similar cases globally, she had used her position at DARPA to launch a different kind of investigation. What they discovered in ancient texts, hidden chambers, and prehistoric cave paintings around the world was both terrifying and their only hope. Humanity had never been alone. And the entities that had once been worshipped as gods, feared as monsters, or dismissed as legends were very real, just sleeping, bound by millennia of ritual and, ironically, humanity's growing disbelief in them. The alien abductions had created the perfect conditions for awakening them: global fear, desperate belief, and ancient sites being uncovered as part of the investigation. "We've opened Pandora's box," Janet said quietly. "After they finish with the aliens, will we be able to bind them again?" Grandmother Willow placed a gnarled hand on Janet's shoulder. "Different price, different pact. But that's tomorrow's problem. Today, we survive." On the screen, the alien ship began to implode, and somewhere deep beneath the Antarctic ice, something ancient stirred and thought, freedom. At last. The Vexari High Council chamber had never been so silent. 12 of the Empire's most powerful leaders sat immobile in their ceremonial exoskeletons, their compound eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the destruction of the Harvester's ship. "This is unprecedented," said Grand Counselor Vextelone finally, her voice sax barely inflating with the effort. "In 9,000 years of expansion, the Vexari Empire has never encountered resistance of this magnitude. It defies scientific explanation," added Counselor Draz, the Empire's foremost xenobiologist. "These entities the humans have somehow weaponized against us. They violate every natural law we understand." Supreme Leader Zex Moro raised a gnarled claw for silence. At over 300 years old, he had guided the Vexari through their greatest period of expansion. Now, he feared, he might preside over their extinction. "What of the other Harvester ships?" he asked, his voice like dried leaves scraping stone. A military officer stepped forward, mandibles tight with tension. "The Harvesters deployed to Sectors 3, 7, and 9 report similar phenomena, Supreme Leader. The humans have somehow activated these Guardians globally. We've lost contact with 62% of our collection pods and 17,843 personnel. And the children? The Zeta-9 extract?" The officer's antennae drooped. "Minimal successful extraction, sir. Approximately 2,000 units processed before the attacks began." Zex Moro's exoskeleton creaked as he shifted his ancient bulk. "Show me the transmissions from Commander ZYX-9 again." The holographic display flickered, showing the increasingly desperate reports from the Harvester's commander. The final transmission caused several council members to emit distress pheromones that filled the chamber with the scent of fear. "A child for a child." Zex Moro repeated the black-eyed woman's threat. "You believe these Earth entities can actually reach across interstellar space? Can threaten our hatcheries?" "Sir," said the military officer reluctantly, "we're already receiving reports from Colony Outpost Zen-12. Something is taking our young. They simply vanish, leaving behind a residue our scientists cannot identify. The pattern mirrors exactly how we harvested human children." The council chamber erupted in alarmed clicking and hissing. "Silence!" Zex Moro commanded. "We must negotiate. Open a communication channel to Earth's leaders." Grand Counselor Vextalone's mandibles quivered skeptically. "The humans don't know we exist. Our stealth technology, has clearly failed. Sexmoral cut her off. These entities knew exactly who we are. They called us by name. Somehow, the humans know. And I suspect the entities are still communicating with them. On Colony Outpost N-12, caretaker Mezvola hurried through the central hatchery, her 6 legs moving with desperate speed. Emergency lights pulsed in alarming patterns, and the sound of thousands of hatchlings clicking in distress filled the massive chamber. "Seal all entry points," she shouted to her assistants. "Double the guard rotation and activate the energy barriers." But even as she gave the orders, she knew they were futile. 27 hatchlings had vanished in the past hour alone, disappearing from sealed incubation chambers under direct observation. The surveillance recordings showed the same impossible sequence each time, a shadow where no shadow should be, extending across the floor, up the incubation chamber wall, and then, the hatchlings simply gone, leaving behind a strange, shimmering residue. "Caretaker!" One of her assistants rushed toward her, panic evident in his jerky movements. "Section 12B just reported 5 more disappearances. And there's something in the central atrium." Mezvola followed him to the security monitoring station. The display showed the vast central atrium of the hatchery complex, a space large enough to accommodate 10,000 adult Vexari. It should have been empty at this hour. It wasn't. A single figure stood in the center of the atrium. Humanoid, but impossibly tall, with dark skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its head was that of an ibis bird, and it held what appeared to be a writing implement in one hand and an ink symbol in the other. "What is it?" whispered one of the security officers. "According to the human mythological database," said another, frantically checking a data pad, "it matches descriptions of an entity called Thoth, an Egyptian deity associated with wisdom, writing, and judgment." The ibis-headed figure raised its writing implement and began to make marks in the air. Where it wrote, reality itself seemed to tear, creating glowing hieroglyphics that hung suspended. "What's it doing?" Mezvola asked, mandibles clicking rapidly in distress. "I believe," said the security officer, voice faint, "it's taking inventory." On Earth, Dr. Janet Chen stood in the center of what had once been the National Mall in Washington, D.C., now transformed into an enormous ritual circle. The grass had withered in perfect geometric patterns, forming symbols from a dozen ancient cultures. The Washington Monument now pulsed with an internal light that no one could explain, while the Lincoln Memorial had changed. The statue of the seated president now moved occasionally when no one was looking directly at it. "They've responded," said General Williams, approaching with a tablet in his hand. "The aliens, they call themselves the Vexari, are requesting negotiations." Janet laughed, though there was no humor in it. "They want to negotiate now? After stealing 20,000 children from their beds? After what they did to them?" The knowledge of what had happened to the abducted children, their neural enzymes extracted while they were still alive, had driven more than one parent among the response team to suicide. Janet herself had nearly followed that path when she learned what had happened to Lily, until Grandmother Willow had offered her a different outlet for her grief: vengeance on a cosmic scale. "We don't control them, you know," Janet said, looking up at the sky where strange lights now danced continually. "The old ones, the forgotten gods, the elder things, whatever you want to call them. We just unlock their cages. They're extracting payment on our behalf, but they have their own agendas. That's what terrifies the Joint Chiefs," General Williams admitted. "These entities, they're taking exactly the same number of alien children as we lost. But what happens when they finish? Will they go back to sleep?" The sky darkened suddenly, though it was barely noon. A massive shape passed overhead, winged, serpentine, with feathers that seemed made of fire and obsidian. Quetzalcoatl, returning from some errand that human minds couldn't comprehend. "Some might," Janet said quietly. "The ones who were gods, who had relationships with humanity, they might honor the old pacts if we reinstate the old observances. And the others?" Janet thought of the thing they had awakened beneath Antarctica. The entity that the Miskatonic texts had called the Sleeper, but which had revealed its true name to the awakening team in a dream that had driven 3 of them to claw out their own eyes. The others were never our gods, she said. They were our predators, our nightmares. Humanity's earliest memories of huddling in caves, terrified of what lurked in the dark, those weren't just fears. They were warnings. Then why release them? Williams demanded. Christ, Janet, if even half of what the mythologists are saying is true, because they were our only hope. Janet shouted, tears streaming down her face. Because the Vexari took my daughter. Because governments and armies were useless against a species that could turn invisible and slip through our most advanced security like it wasn't there. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. And because I made a pact. Me, personally. With her. Williams paled. You didn't tell the committee about this. No, I didn't. Because they would have stopped me. But she came to me in a dream after Lily was taken. Showed me where to find the binding stones. How to break the seals. What price she wanted in return. What price, Janet? Before she could answer, her phone vibrated. A text message from Professor El Hashim. They're coming back. Commander ZYX-9 had never expected to see Earth again. After the destruction of the Harvester's ship, he and a handful of survivors had managed to reach an emergency escape pod. Even more surprisingly, the entities that had decimated their forces had allowed the pod to leave. No, not allowed. Guided. Herded. Like prey being driven where the predator wanted it. Now, 3 days later, the pod was approaching Earth again. Not under his control, none of the systems responded to Vexari commands anymore, but drawn inexorably back to the blue world that had destroyed their mission. Status report, he ordered, more from habit than any expectation of good news. Lieutenant Krell, one of only 5 survivors from the command deck, checked the pod's limited instrumentation. We're on a direct course for the human settlement called Washington, D.C. Atmospheric entry in approximately 12 minutes. And our passengers? Both officers glanced back at the rear of the pod, where 2 enormous sarcophagi stood upright against the bulkhead. They had appeared out of nowhere during their second night of drifting, materializing through the hull without triggering any breach alarms. Made of some black stone that absorbed all light, they were covered in hieroglyphics that seemed to move when viewed from the corner of one's eye. No change, Commander, Krell said quietly. Whatever's inside them remains dormant. Science Officer Melix, who had been obsessively studying the sarcophagi since their appearance, looked up from her data pad. I believe they're waiting to be delivered, sir. We're the couriers. Couriers for what? To whom? Based on the minimal data I've been able to gather, Melix said, her scientific detachment failing to hide her fear. They contain entities similar to the ones that attacked us. Possibly the leaders or ambassadors of whatever these things are. ZYX-9's mandibles clicked in bitter amusement. So we're delivering death to the humans? Some final spite from the entities that destroyed our mission? I don't think so, sir, Melix said carefully. I think we're delivering the negotiating team. The pod shuddered as it hit Earth's atmosphere. Through the viewing portal, ZYX-9 watched as flames licked around the hull, not the expected result of atmospheric friction, but actual tongues of fire in impossible colors, guiding their descent. The Vexari High Council would sacrifice our entire colony on Zen 12 to save the rest of the Empire, he said quietly. You know that, don't you? They've calculated the acceptable losses already. Perhaps, Krell agreed. But I'm not certain these entities will be satisfied with just one colony. The black-eyed female said, a child for a child. We took 20,000 human offspring. There are exactly 20,000 Vexari hatchlings on Zen 12. And after that? ZYX-9 asked. What do these things want beyond balanced scales? No one answered. No one needed to. The pod broke through the cloud cover, and the sprawling human settlement came into view. ZYX9 expected to see chaos, destruction, panic, the natural result of supernatural entities manifesting across the planet. Instead, the city appeared eerily orderly. Humans lined the streets in perfect formation. And in what his data banks identified as the National Mall, a vast ritual circle had been prepared. As they drew closer, ZYX9 could make out individual humans. At the center of the circle stood a female, small even by human standards, with features that indicated East Asian genetic heritage. Despite the distance, he could somehow see her face with perfect clarity. Could see the grief and rage and terrible purpose written there, and suddenly he knew her. "That's Dr. Janet Chin," he said, his voice sac barely functioning. "The mother of specimen LC7291. How could you possibly know that?" Krell asked, bewildered. "Because she is showing me," ZYX9 whispered. "The one they call Hecate. She's in my mind right now. Showing me what we did." The pod slowed its descent, hovering 20 feet above the ritual circle. The doors slid open without any command. "They want us to go out there," Neelix said, her exoskeleton pale with terror. "To face human justice." "No," ZYX9 replied, standing. "They want me. The commander who ordered the harvest. The rest of you were following orders." He moved toward the door. "Stay with the sarcophagi. Whatever emerges from them, try not to anger it." Before his officers could protest, ZYX9 stepped out of the pod, using his lower limbs to absorb the impact as he dropped to the ground. The ritual circle beneath him pulsed with energy he could feel through his exoskeleton. Dr. Janet Chin approached. Behind her came other humans, military personnel, scientists, and less easily identified individuals wearing ceremonial garb from various human cultures. "Commander ZYX9, she said, and her voice carried the same multitonal quality that the black-eyed woman's had. Not entirely human. Not entirely her own. "Dr. Chin," he replied, attempting a gesture of respect with his upper limbs. "I come on behalf of the Vexari High Council to negotiate terms." "There are no terms to negotiate," she said flatly. "The pact has been made. A child for a child. 20,000 of yours for 20,000 of ours." "And after?" ZYX9 asked. "What then? Will your allies return to their slumber?" Janet smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Some will. Those who once had relationships with humanity, who were worshipped and respected, they've agreed to new pacts. New arrangements. And the others? The others were never bound by human belief to begin with. They were bound by older entities. Guardians who prevented them from entering our dimension fully." She glanced at the Washington Monument, which now glowed with symbols identical to those on the mysterious sarcophagi. "Those guardians have new instructions now." As if on cue, the two sarcophagi floated out of the pod, drifting to land on either side of Janet. The black stone cracked open, revealing not mummified bodies as ZYX9 had expected, but pure, swirling darkness. Two figures stepped out, one with the head of a jackal, the other with the head of an ibis. "Anubis and Thoth," Janet said by way of introduction. "They will oversee the completion of the exchange. After that, the Vexari are banned from approaching Earth for as long as our sun burns." "And if we violate this ban?" ZYX9 asked, already knowing the answer. "Then the really old ones come out to play," said a wizened human female who had joined Janet. "The ones that hunt across stars. The ones that see your entire species as nothing but food." Behind them, the ground trembled. The reflecting pool cracked open, and something began to emerge, something vast and glistening and wrong in ways that ZYX9's brain couldn't process. "This one," Janet said, nodding toward the horror rising from the pool, "is just a messenger. A fragment of the thing beneath Antarctica. It came to deliver a warning to whoever rules your people." The thing unfurled appendages that hurt to look at, manipulating reality itself to create a message in the air. ZYX9 didn't understand the symbols, but meaning poured directly into his mind. We were here before your kind evolved. We will be here after your worlds burn. Obey the pact or become prey. As suddenly as it had appeared, the entity collapsed in on itself, vanishing with a sound like the universe sighing in relief. Do we have an understanding, Commander? Janet asked, her voice once again fully human, though no less terrifying for it. ZYX9 lowered himself in the closest approximation of a human bow, his physiology allowed. We do, Dr. Chin. The pact will be honored. Good. You'll be released to return to your people with our terms. She turned to leave, then paused. I have a message for your High Council. For your Supreme Leader specifically. What message? Janet's eyes momentarily shifted, becoming entirely black, then returning to normal so quickly ZYX9 almost believed he'd imagined it. Tell him the old ones remember the Vexari. From before. They remember why your people left Mars. Ice formed along ZYX9's neural pathways. Mars? They remember, Janet repeated. And they never forgave the first betrayal. This was your second chance. There won't be a third. As she walked away, the jackal-headed Anubis approached ZYX9, carrying a small, ornate box made of the same light-absorbing stone as the sarcophagi. What is this? ZYX9 asked, instinctively recoiling. The deity's voice bypassed his auditory receptors, appearing directly in his mind. A gift. A reminder. Against his better judgment, ZYX9 accepted the box. When he opened it, his entire body went rigid with shock. Inside lay a small, crystalline structure, unmistakably a Vexari memory crystal. The kind that had been obsolete for over 12,000 years. This is impossible, he whispered. These crystals predate our recorded history. Not impossible, came the reply. Merely forgotten. Like us. Like the pact your ancestors made. The crystal began to glow, and involuntarily, ZYX9's neuroreceptors activated, connecting with the ancient device. Images flooded his consciousness, Vexari, but more primitive, fleeing Mars as titanic shapes rose from beneath its surface. A desperate journey to their current home world. A pact made with entities of shadow and light. A promise never to return to the inner solar system. A promise broken when the first survey ships detected Zeta-9 enzyme in human children. You understand now, Janet said, having returned to witness his revelation. Go home, Commander. Honor the pact. Or next time, they won't stop at one colony. 6 months later, Dr. Janet Chin stood alone at her daughter's grave. The headstone was simple. Lily Chin, beloved daughter, 2016 to 2024. No body lay beneath it. The Vexari extraction process had left nothing to bury, but Janet needed somewhere to visit, to remember. We did it, Lily, she whispered, placing flowers on the grave. They're gone. They won't come back. From the trees nearby, a soft voice replied. But we remain. Janet didn't turn. She knew what stood there. Knew the bargain she had made. You promised to go back to sleep, she said. Those of you who could. Some have, came the reply. The old gods are satisfied with renewed belief, with temples rebuilt in secret places. But the others, the deep ones, the outer ones, they have tasted freedom again. Janet closed her eyes, fighting back tears. That wasn't our deal. No. Your deal was personal. A mother's vengeance. We honored that. But awakening has consequences beyond human understanding. What happens now? The figure emerged from the trees, the form of a woman, but not quite right, like someone wearing an ill-fitting human costume. Now, Dr. Chin, you help us navigate this new world. You become our intermediary. Our high priestess. And if I refuse? The not-quite woman smiled, revealing too many teeth. Then the pact is broken. And what was unleashed on the Vexari will seem merciful compared to what comes next. Janet looked down at her daughter's grave one last time. Then she turned to face the entity, the thing wearing human shape that had once been worshipped as Hecate, goddess of witchcraft, crossroads, and ghosts. "What do you need me to do?" "First," said Hecate, her form shifting subtly, becoming more correct but somehow more terrifying for it. "You will help us understand what humanity has become in our absence. These technologies, these new beliefs. And then? Then we prepare. The Vexari were not the first to harvest your world, Dr. Chin. Nor will they be the last." Hecate gestured to the sky, where stars were just becoming visible in the twilight. "The universe is vast and hungry. But now, at least, humanity has its guardians back." She held out her hand. After a moment's hesitation, Janet took it. Above them, the stars seemed to blink, as if countless eyes were watching. Waiting. The old ones were awake. And they remembered everything.